All right. Sam here. We're again mid-morning, Monday, December 18th. Another member interested in Siacoin, which is getting a little pop here today. Maybe some interesting things to learn there. Not unlike what we just looked at in Digibytes. So here you can. So here you can see the ICO, or when it hit Bittrex. So I got to get that off the screen so you can see it. So you can see a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We did get a nice 5-wave into that top, and then the long winter of alts, where anything spread to Bitcoin has just been crushed. So, there's not a lot of value in going back through all of that. This is side of Bitcoin. This is the 4-hour on Bittrex, just to let you know where I'm pulling that from. So over here on CoinGecko, as I like to suggest, look for coins of 50 or higher. This is at 65. We're at $500 million of market cap. This is a good-looking project. You can do some fundamental digging here if you're curious about it, if you're not familiar with that project. But they've been around for over 2 years. You can see where the bulk of the volume is. It's almost all against Bitcoin, and the bulk of it, much like Digibyte, is on Bittrex and Polo. So since the majority of the volume is on Bittrex, that's why I'm looking over here. So the long downtrend. And now we've had a few attempts to try and get a new trend started that have failed. This was the last one as we broke above the Vegas wave. But now it looks like we're breaking above and holding. So let's go down to the 1 hour. See if there's anything there that's useful to us. So you can see I've got a count on it already. Now this action in here, it really doesn't offer us much value. This clearly is a hard dump. If we go down here, so you could call it a double bottom here, even though we're slightly lower here. This is where we start to get some structure coming off of that long downtrend. Here was the first attempt. It fails. Now it looks like we might have something that could hold here. So if I open this up, you can see we get an interesting structure here where we can clearly see 5 waves. So we get a 1, 2. Looks like we double top here into a 3. Down for the 4, there's the overlap of the 1. Thus, we have a leading diagonal, which we would anticipate in a 1 wave or an A wave is where we'll find them. Now, this is kind of interesting. Take note of this. So if we look at this double top here. Get that right. So look at this. So we in effect here, we double top into the 3rd, and then we come down and we double bottom right here. So as I will often tell you, that's not random. That doesn't happen accidentally. It's just a perfect example of prior resistance offering the support. That's why whenever you're trading something, you're looking for entries, always look left and look for areas where you had prior resistance. This was tested twice, and then we tested twice again here. So potentially that's a pivot that's meaningful to us. So we can look at this and go 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's our 3, 4. So if we operate on the assumption that we have a completed 5-wave structure of a leading diagonal, well, now we're assuming that is finished, and we're now correcting that entire 5-wave sequence. So pulling from low to high, well, this is kind of interesting. Note here that this is common algo activity. So we get a little front run here on the 50 that coincides with this double top up here and this double bottom. So again, it almost looks like it's made up. It's so perfect technically, but I assure you it's not. You'll see this on your chart. So this would appear, though, as though we have what this double. It looks to me like this is classically an A wave. So I wouldn't necessarily assume that the low is in here. All right. So even if we just think about the length of time. So if we look at this 5-wave structure here, and I look at that compared to, let me change the color here. So if I put that, I'll put that in green. So if you look at this and you think, oh, okay, well, if this is correcting that's awfully small, relatively speaking. So that would suggest to me that this correction is not complete. And also, if we just think in Elliott context, we would be anticipating a 3-wave structure. So if we have an A, then a B. So maybe we come down here and we have to double check, or what would in effect be a triple check on this 50, on this pivot here, right? We know algos will defend there, but they'll keep buying it all the way down to the 618. If we get on the other side of the 65, then we have a failure swing. But from Elliott speak, we know that if that's a 1 wave, well, a 2 wave, statistically speaking, it can go as deep as the 786, but our high probability zone is right here between the 50 and the 618. That's where we more typically and statistically will find the two wave low bottoming. Now we have a couple of idiosyncrasies here that are consistent in crypto. We're seeing very shallow C waves. So it would not surprise me if this was just about double checking this pivot here to check that low, but nothing says we couldn't go down here to this zone here. So if we look at it from the other direction, right, you always have a fib fight from long. So we're deep. We go pop through the 61865, but we know a B wave can go anywhere from the 50 to the 786. So that's not terribly surprising. If we can look at that algo target down here, well, this is kind of interesting. So we get the algo, the negative 23.6 here, just a couple in front of the 618. So that's a contender. We'd also, let me just open this up a little bit. We'd want to look at the relationship from the A wave projected from the B. So kind of interesting here. So we get this nice confluence zone right here where we get a few things happen. Here's the 100%. So this would be the most common target, again, statistically speaking, for a C wave relative to the length of the A wave. That would be 100%. So we get this nice confluence zone here. We've got the Vegas wave here a little bit above it. 50 has, if it's going to come back down here, this has to be rechecked. So potentially, I mean, this nothing, again, because this is here, it doesn't mean we must come down there. We could, the C wave could be here. We're seeing a lot of that. But if I'm looking for an entry, I'm looking for that high probability zone. So I'm looking for it somewhere down here. Here's my my 618 of the A wave is right in here. So, right now, let me open that up. We can put a Pitchfork on it. So now I've got I would use that. So that is the modified shift. So let's look at it with original. So let's look at that. So see, here's where the Pitchfork and the median lines can add some value relative to time. So if we're going to get to the median line, that has to happen pretty quickly from a time perspective here, right? So that's today, tomorrow, we have to get there. Now, if for it to eventually get to the median line, so the idea being, if we've got a corner pocket here where we know statistically, if we have a good pivot here, we have an 80% probability of making the median line. Right, that's Andrew's trading principle number one. If from those three pivots, but it better get there soon if we're going to tap the median line. Here it would have to do this almost today. We'd have to see that if that's going to stay consistent there. Now that would be a great potential buy for us, technically speaking, but we don't know that it's going to get there. So the next thing I would do, just to allow for a little more time to take place here, is I would look at the shift here. That's a little shallow, so I would go, that's why I had the modified shift on that. So I would look at that and say, okay, well, if I'm going to come down and I'm going to, perhaps I get a 5-wave subdivision into my C wave, that means that's a little bit more reasonable, but this certainly is interesting to me over here. Now, we got to sell off, to get there. But, given that it's spread to Bitcoin, that wouldn't surprise me at all. So ideally here, this is a great looking entry down here because we have all of this confluence of technical data down here. We're in the high probability zone. We've got the median line. We've got the algo target. We've got the 61865. It's all there lining up for us. But just because it's down there and we can identify it doesn't mean we trade there. But I certainly would want to be alerted if we're going to come back down and test this support here. So that's something to alarm. I want to see what kind of reaction I get at the median line. Am I going through it? Well, then I'm really interested down here if we're going to come down and check the 618. Then I'm really excited about that. So you can see here. So keeping in mind that we have this tendency for these shallow C waves. That could be the case. See that would create this for us, which we're seeing a lot of. So this triangle pattern where we get from the we use that as our A. So we get this. So this would put our C wave right here. That's happening a lot, right? But that's low probability. So I would not be a buyer there myself. I would want to see a better technical setup because I know I have higher probabilities if this is a 2 wave down here. And this is a very short, shallow C wave without enough subdivision for me to really get excited about it. But it certainly could do it. Nothing says it can't do it. So if I see that, then we have so much upside here. That doesn't really concern me because if I think about where this could be going, if that happens, well, I'm going to get an odd-shaped 2 wave and a shallow 2, although we've come down to the 50. So technically, you could make the case that, okay, well, my two wave, the A wave of my two wave got to the 50, so at least I checked the 50. But if I come up here, again, if that starts to move, it's going to subdivide. So I'm going to look for my two wave here. So if this is my one, remember we got to put it waves within waves. So if that's my one, and if that were my two, well, I'm going to have a big 3, 4, 5 up here. So I'm going to look for a 5-wave sequence into my one wave, and I'm going to look for the next pullback as my entry here, because now I've got more data. Now I have more confidence in that structure, that I've got a leading diagonal. I had this unusual second wave if it ends up being that shallow, but it certainly could play that way. If I get that, I may end up with that. So if I extend this, then we get that descending triangle pattern. So maybe we come back down here and we visit the median line one more time. That would be interesting to me. I would want to see a reaction there. Are the oscillators any help there? Well, we got a ways to go here. So really all we see here is that this was the strongest wave. So this potentially could get relabeled. So we may end up relabeling this. So this is just the reality of what you deal with as a trader. There's no certainty here. There's only probabilities. So where can we position ourselves with the probabilities working in our favor rather than gambling because we like the project and we're impatient, so we're going to buy it here because we don't want to give it enough time to. So then if it just ends up going back down to where you statistically would anticipate it to go, now you're doing a little self-punishment because you were impatient, you bought it, now you're taking the drawdown, now you're thinking, oh, well, do I add more? Do I average down my price? If it keeps going down here, now you're deep underwater and you're just, you're beating yourself up because you were impatient. So I would rather miss the trade and let it go if it's going to do that and look for the next pullback than be impatient and be jumping in here ahead of where I know the likely path for it. The likely path, not the guaranteed path, but the likely path is for this to continue to come down and revisit or at least check this area between the 50 and the 618. I got lots of upside. If this is a new trend, I'm not there's so much opportunity to get on board here. I'm not going to worry about whether I bought the absolute pivot on the 2. That's, it's rare that you get that. That's not your goal. Your goal is to look for low risk, high reward entries where you have a confluence of data and technical evidence to support your trade. And to me, it's not there yet. Even though it could rip from here. It's just not there yet. So I'll wait. I'll certainly want to alarm it. It's one I would keep an eye on. I know it's a good project. So the potential upside here is substantial. Remember, we looked at this. If I take this, let me go out to a 3-hour, and we look at this in potential of where it's been and where it could be going. As we looked at this, we got a lot of upside here. If that's just the beginning of the trend, I'm not worried about missing anything. I'm just getting more information. Now, we've got a long, long, long way to go. Look at it in context. See, that's why I encourage you to, don't get caught up in the, you're down on the 15-minute and the 5-minute and you're trying to catch every little pivot. This is the move you want. You want to get back to be challenging some of these pivots. If that's real, if we really have a new trend starting, I'm not worried about whether I caught it here or here, relatively speaking. I just want to get in where it's technically where I have all the components that I look for: price, pattern, structural relationship, market geometry, the risk reward that I'm comfortable with, that doesn't overextend my account, that doesn't hurt me if I get stopped out, because would not be, you're going to get, that's just the nature of the beast here. Stops are just part of trading. So if I get stopped out here, it's not going to hurt me, not going to blow up my account because I over leveraged because I'm in love with the Siacoin project. Just another trade. As far as I'm concerned, just another trade. So I wouldn't do anything differently here, regardless of how excited I was about the fundamental story. Now, if you're looking at this fundamentally because you love their story, well then, now you're a long-term investor. Maybe you're a holder, and your view is, well, if it's this low here, and I love this project, I know it's going higher. Well, then all of this technical information really isn't that meaningful to you because you're just, hey, it's down. If I like it here, I'm going to like it even more here. I'm going to like it even more here because I know 2 years from now it's going to be at new highs. So decide. Are you a trader? Are you a holder? Are you a swing trader? Are you going to trade this on the 5-minute? Get clear about what you're trying to do. For me, I'm a swing trader, so I wait. I wait for what I like to see, and when I see it, I take it, knowing that the odds are I'm going to be wrong. Because always the assumption is you're going to be wrong more than you're right. So, again, I just put myself in a position where if I'm stopped out, no problem. I reevaluate. Stops are part of the business. I look at that and go, okay, well, if it's not this, could it be that? If it's not a one wave, what could it be? Where's the next trade setting up? Where can I get good risk reward? So even here, looking at this, even just the first target, if we come down here and we're going to challenge that 61865, that algo target, well, that's 8-1, and we're not even looking at the upside potential from an Elliott count as to where we'd be looking. Again, this is just the one wave going in. So the third wave of what could be the third wave of a larger degree one wave, we don't know where this is going. All I know is that I don't want to get hurt anywhere in here. I don't love this so much that I'm going to let it hurt me. So I'm going to look for that reasonable risk reward, knowing that if this runs, I might take a partial here. I might take let some run here, and then all of a sudden I've got nothing but house money invested, so I can sure as hell let that run. Maybe I am going to new highs. I don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. So from an Elliott count, I could look at that and say, well, if this is my 1 and I get a 2 down here, well, there's my 3 target up here. There's my high probability zone for my third. So I certainly know that's potentially a target there. Now I'm at 16-1. If I can get an entry down here at the 618, let's say I can't. Let's say I got to buy it at the 50, or I'm averaging down, and I get. So if I'm a buyer here at the 50, stop under the 618. There's my target up here at the 161. 1618, 175 box, there's 7.58-1. Man, I'll take that all day long. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it there.